So I wanted to talk about something that tends to jar me out of a story when I'm reading. When we write a story, we have this progression of events. Typically, we write in the past tense, and so we have this timeline that's being told to us by some type of a narrator. There's a narrative voice, somebody that's delivering the content to us as we experience it. And even though we kind of experience it as it's unfolding, because it's past tense, we also have this sense that this is also something that maybe has happened that we're learning about from the narrator, or maybe not so much. We're just experiencing the story as it unfolds. And sometimes as a writer, we want to use words like today, or tomorrow, or yesterday, which are highly relative terms. And the trouble with words like these is because if I am reading a story and come across the word today, which establishes a point of reference in time in the story, I immediately ask, well, relative to who? And because the narrator is the person talking to me, I might easily think that it's relative to the narrator, even though I know it's relative to the character, or is supposed to be relative to the character. But what it can do is it can mistakenly drag the narrator into the story, and by doing that, kind of jolts me out of the story. Similarly, I use a word like here that also has high relativity in regards to place instead of time in this case. So I say Johnny landed here next to the garbage can, or something like that. Again, my brain is saying, well, here relative to who? And it can drag in the narrator because I know the narrator is talking to me. And maybe we're using these terms here, today, tomorrow, yesterday, now, things like that, because we're trying to immerse the reader. We're trying to do something maybe like deep POV, deep point of view, where we really immerse the reader into the story. We try to unfold the story from their perspective completely as if it's happening to us. And yet, while these terms might be really effective for certain readers as far as immersing them into the story, for me, what happens is it actually jolts me out of the story, so I'm less immersed than I would be otherwise. Like, say, for example, we wrote today, Johnny walked through the market. Tomorrow, the people would understand why that mattered. Oh, we're off screen here. So here we've established a point in time that's in relation to somebody. The narrator's talking to us. My brain might be saying, oh, that's the narrator. I'm kind of jolted out of the story. Or maybe you're more immersed. But there's a risk involved, which is my main point here. When you use these terms like today and tomorrow, there's a risk that you might jolt the reader out of the story. And do we need these terms? Are they necessary for us to communicate what we're trying to communicate? And will the reader not be immersed if we write differently? Well, we can write around things like this. We can say, for example, Johnny walked through the market that morning. By the morrow, the people would understand why that mattered. We've essentially said the same thing, but we've used much less relative terms, like that morning, which is much more relative to the character in the story than saying today. Or by the morrow, this is a much more ambiguously relevant term or relative term than saying tomorrow, right? So we can communicate the same thing without taking the risk of jarring the reader out of the story. Now, that's not to say you want to not try for that really deep POV approach or strategy of using words like today, but you should recognize that there's a risk, and a reader like myself is almost always jolted out of the story by those types of relative words.